Welcome back to the Whatnots Reactor Core number 129. And welcome back to us talking about the Venture Bros. It feels both so long, but also right at home because they often took very long to make their seasons. Oh, man, I'm happy to be here. So,
yes, this is a long time coming. Mm-hmm. We covered the Adventure Brothers on our other podcast, The Review Show, back in early 2020. It was our first experiment with covering the entirety of a show and not just a new thing every week, book club style. Yeah. So we talked about that beginning of 2020. And this is a longtime favorite show of mine. I fell in love with the show in like 2010.
Yeah.
And when we watched it at the beginning of 2020, I hadn't watched season 7 yet. I was like, I need to rewatch the show before I start the new season. It's time for a revisit. And then I was able to watch it with you. And it was accidentally the most miraculous thing in my life that during this very stressful, like initial lockdown time, I had new episodes of my favorite TV show I could watch. Amazing. Like it was accidentally the best thing I could have done for myself. So I have an even stronger emotional connection to the Venture Brothers now after doing that series than I ever did before.
Indeed. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson, Venture Bros enthusiast extraordinaire.
Probably should have introduced myself by name instead of giving you this very emotional statement up front.
Hey, that is A-okay. I first watched this show with you, as you mentioned here on our podcast. It was a show that I always wanted to get into because people that I really respected enjoyed it and always talked about it, being like, oh man, it's so good, it's so smart, it's funny, it's not what you would expect. And yeah, I really enjoyed it once we started watching it for the show. And I think instantly became a favorite of mine. I obviously don't have the like Art of the Venture Bros book that you have back there on your set, or the t-shirt that you're wearing.
I got my boys back here behind the camera. Let me see if I can grab them.
Pulling down the DVD. Oh, the action figures. Yeah, there we go. Dr. Venture and the Monarch.
Yeah, the DVDs. I do have all the DVDs and Blu-rays. Those are in the living room. This is the number one thing that I have collectibles for. I'm not a collectible person. I'm not a t-shirt person. But for this show, I am.
Yeah. So yeah, the Venture Bros Radiant is the blood of the Baboon heart. This was kind of an emotional up and down for us as we discovered that this thing was happening. Because obviously they announced an 8th season and then that got canceled. And then everyone was just like, what? The scripts were partly written, like this was halfway in production.
Yeah. Like this is a show with a real continuing storyline that is very close, we can tell, to like giving us some answers. It was like season 8 might be all they need to like really tie this up if you give them the notice. So when we talked about season 7, we were so excited for season 8, and then a couple months later, when you're already in a pandemic, guess what? Your favorite show is canceled. And then we got the news that it, among a number of other long-running Adult Swim shows, Metalocalypse and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Venture Brothers, Brothers in Arms, we're getting Blu-ray movies. And I'm very happy that it was like, we're releasing them digitally and on Blu-ray. Like same week. You get to have like a nice physical edition of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it sucked that we did not get the full season to wrap up the show, but we did get a straight to DVD movie. And I think for like having a plan in mind for a full season and then kind of having to condense that down, and also like time constraints and pandemic stuff, like making this during that time, I feel like they did a good job. with this. I thought this was really well made. I posted on one of the plethora of social media accounts that's out there that watching this movie to me felt like putting on a pair of favorite underwear that you thought you lost, right? It hugs all your bits and bobs. It's comfy. It feels like home, but you thought you lost it.
Yes.
Right. You were so scared. You were like,
right.
oh no, I will never have this comfort again. And
what
then
if your
you
favorite
find them and you put them on and it's just like, oh, yes, this feels so good.
Your house burned down and you think you lost your favorite little stuffed giraffe, Mr. Ricci. You're never going to get to hug Mr. Ricci again. And then your neighbor, Dr. Orpheus, the necromancer, is like, don't worry, Dean, I was able to save Mr. Ricci.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. I think this just hits the ground running if you are a fan of the show and you know all the lore. I think if you've never watched The Venture Brothers, probably not the best place to start, to be honest.
Why start here?
Yeah, no, start at that square one. Go back. I even tried to look up on YouTube, so what happened in season 1? What happened in season 2? And surprisingly, not as many recap videos as I was expecting.
Man,
that is actually a pretty open niche if you want to be the one to make season 1 recaps. There is an official Adult Swim recap for seasons 1 through 4
that Henchman 21 does.
Yeah, as a podcast, but I even that, if you're actually looking for okay, what did happen, that one's also kind of confusing. I don't know if I would honestly recommend it and end it, but it did at least remind me of oh yeah, there was that one storyline about how Hank tried to made out with that one woman, they had sex, but it turns out that maybe what's his name's mom, and all of and the whole thing mom. Is right. Yeah, it was just oh yeah, I forgot about all of that. And this I think I was very sucked into the idea of the plot being okay, so who is their mom? Is Dr. Venture related to the Monarch? What's happening with all of that? That I think was my one thing. I bet they're related. I think yes. I know. And here we go. We finally have a little bit of answers in this.
Yes, and that's what we've been striving for. Those are the two big mysteries hanging over the show. What exactly is the connection with Dr. Venture and the Monarch, and who is the boy's mom? And you get very interesting, surprising answers to both of those questions in this special. They save them both for the very end. You don't get to know a lot of fallout of these revelations. Yeah. But that's something else I wound up really liking, really appreciating about this movie is that at the end of it, the status quo isn't very different. This doesn't, we know it is the last thing. It reveals these mysteries, but it doesn't otherwise feel like a finale, which is strangely comforting. Everything we were imagining was going to happen in a season 8. The door's open for us to just keep imagining it. It's there was no conclusion to anybody's journey in this movie, just sort of the relationship between the show and its audience. So you can just imagine whatever you want for the Monarch to get up to.
You can use your action figures and mash them together and have fun that way, right? Yeah, exactly. That is, I think, also the shortcomings of the movie and just kind of the circumstances that they had, right? Is that, you don't really get finality to everything in this, but there is that emotional closure of like, I've been watching the show for so long, and this has been the central mystery. And now I kind of know.
Right.
But you don't get the fallout. You don't get like the status quo doesn't really change. There's like not much different in the world or anything as a result. It just kind of is what it is. And I think that is the shortcoming. But I had a blast watching this. I could really tell that this could have been a full season. They could have explored some of these more, because you have like 3 or 4 different plots happening in this movie. It's pretty busy here, because you have them trying to find Hank, right? You have Jane like out on his adventure to find his brother, but then you have Hank out there trying to find his mom. You have the Monarch and him like trying to catch up on everything and still like get his status back in the villain world. And then you have Dr. Venture, who's kind of oblivious to all of it, but somehow his story still ties into everything. Right? He's launching a new smart home product, a new helper bot, and something goes wrong with them. They all start levitating, and that and that starts lifting up their entire building into space. Like, what is happening? It's chaos.
That's one of my favorite moments in film so far this year.
It's a great moment
when the building just takes off.
Yeah. to the I want to rock right now.
Right. This movie's got 2 very good needle drops in it. We've got Small Town Boy by Bronski Beat and It Takes Two by Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock. You deal with these like helper, like home assistant things, these little canister smart devices that look like Helper's head, the family robot. Is that you can use them as a speaker, but if the volume gets too loud, it affects something in the mechanism and the thing starts levitating. And Ventec Tower is full of like thousands and thousands of these things because the product's about to be launched. And then this villain like takes control of all of them, puts on It Takes Two, cranks it up, and all of them levitate and lift an entire skyscraper into the stratosphere. It's a really lovely moment. I love the poetry of It Takes Two being the song, just because this is a show all about different partnerships. Like it's really relied on this like 2-man team of Jackson Public and Doc Hammer, who then play so many pairs of characters throughout the show. It's all about these pairs. So It Takes Two, besides just being funny, I thought was symbolically very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It was good. That was kind of like a brief plot synopsis. Do you want to add stuff in there? I know I kind of glossed over the stuff and just did the like, here's the elevator pitch.
I think so. Yeah, that's most of the storylines. We're following, well, I guess Doc Venture, the Monarch, the 2 boys on their separate journeys. Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch develops her own thing she's investigating as well. It's very busy.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is why I was like, it feels just like putting on a pair of your favorite underwear that you thought you lost, right? Like there's so much happening, but each and every moment still feels uniquely like the Venture Burrows. Like it doesn't feel like they missed a beat, or they focused on the wrong things or something. It just like, this is it. This is what I wanted. This is great.
Why I love this show. It feels so distinct and so personal. Less in an emotional way and more of like, here's these 2 guys making each other laugh and like doing voices at each other. Like it really feels like you're let in on these goofy conversations. And that is sustained. I think you can tell how things were supposed to be TV show episodes, and that maybe that is the format in which the story works the best. Yeah. But I think this is very successful, very touching. It is a nice scrapbook of past memories on the show. But again, not feeling you're satisfied, but the fact that it doesn't feel like a finale, actually, I think makes it more comforting. I don't think that detracts from any sense of closure.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe opens the door down the road for a season 8, whether it's on Cartoon Network or Netflix picks it up, or who knows what. I don't know how all of that stuff works, but there you go. So I this was out on digital and on a physical release. I bought it on Amazon. I know you bought it digitally too, right? Or did
yes.
Because you bought the physical, did they give you a code that you could here's your download?
It came
out day one.
Yes, but it came out digitally on last Friday, but it didn't come out on physical release until Tuesday. So I bought it on Vudu, and then I bought the Blu-ray, which does also give me a digital code. But also comes with a free poster of the cover art. So that's a fun bonus. That's value I didn't expect.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. So my question is then, what special features and stuff is on the physical Blu-ray? What else is on there besides just the movie?
There is a creator commentary, Doc and Jackson's commentaries they've done on like nearly every episode. I think it's only on select episodes on season 1 because there was only so much that could like fit on the DVD at that time. But since then, every single episode has had a commentary by them. They're so funny. So you've got that. You've got something that is labeled as Doc and Jackson answer fan questions that I figured would be a featurette. But when I clicked on it, it is another commentary track over the movie, which I haven't watched yet. I didn't realize that's what it was. So I didn't have time to watch it before we sat down here. I didn't get my Blu-ray until like Friday night. So I still have that ahead of me as a special treat. And then there's another feature called Hodgman and Friends, which is just John Hodgman sits down and talks to the creators. Don't know if it's like an hour long. I don't know what's in there. I don't know if it's an interview, a variety show.
Different kinds of commentaries on this.
There's those 3 things, but those 3 things are like pretty substantial.
That's awesome. So was there, like, from watching the commentary, was there any kind of tidbits, bits and bobs that you learned that you thought was interesting, either about the production of this movie or about the show in general?
A lot of the commentaries are tangents, which are beloved to me. I'd already watched the movie twice, and then I watched it a third time with commentary, and they did point out a visual detail I didn't catch the first time. I was very happy to see.
Which is?
I always forget if we do like a full spoiler break and reactor cores or not.
we sometimes do, sometimes don't. I figured since I already mentioned the whole building being lifted up, we're kind of already in spoiler zone. But just in case, I will hit our spoiler button here. So we are officially in spoilers.
Because this refers to the very final seconds of the thing in that post-credit sequence where you find out that, well, first you learn that like the boy's mother is Debbie St. Simone, but she was just an egg donor for this project Dr. Venture was working on, which is where he just grew the little babies himself, and he wears them in this like fake stomach, this like cyber thing that's like strapped onto his body.
Stranding looking thing. God, Kojima predicting another thing, right?
So that's the final minutes of the movie, is that you see him like sitting at his drafting table, and then something beeps and he's like, oh, time for the boys to get here, and then Helper's like rocking a little cradle. Helper's always been there. This movie does so right by Helper. And you see the little babies inside this like clear translucent techno womb just like do the little go team venture at each other. It's so sweet. But when Hank goes to see Dermot, and Dermot has taken all of the debris from the destroyed Venture compound, there's a lot of very cool Easter eggs in there. But the one I didn't catch is that he has that womb. And like Hank is fiddling with it at one point. He's holding his own womb in his hands and he doesn't know what it is.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't think I caught that. Of just like, what is that device? I don't remember that.
I didn't. I didn't fine tooth comb this thing, but I did like a regular comb over it. I did pause on some things, like some of the artifacts that Dermot has that he's taken, which is so fitting for his character, both in that he's just like pilfering this stuff and like selling it back to people, but also like he is a venture and he's never really gotten to be a venture. So you can see this as a sort of emotional, like, if my father won't hand me the family legacy, I'll take it for myself. I'll put the big V logo up on my wall. I'm in charge of my own legacy now. Dermot now has Orb. I love that. Even if Orb is totally broken and pointless, I think it's very funny that it did end up in Dermot's hands, the lost venture.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, like this did feel like a tour de force of like, here's all these characters you know and love, you remember. They each got a little bit of screen time. It never really felt like anyone like was neglected or like forgotten about.
You see almost everybody. I know they did talk about how the one thing they were pained to have to cut out of it was a final button on Serena's story with the boys, or getting to see Wide Whale again, or but again, you watch this and you also get the impression that they'll talk to Serena next week. Like nothing feels like it's not like going to happen in the narrative of the story.
Like, yes. Okay, now that we've solved this mystery, let's focus on you.
Yes, I have confidence that they can resolve that issue successfully.
Yeah.
So like that's something that was very important in the last bits of season 7 that doesn't get to continue here, unfortunately. Billy and White have always been my favorites. I would have taken a little bit more Billy and White, but otherwise, there's so many characters we get to spend a good amount of time with. There's a lot of Red Death. There's a lot of Jefferson Twilight. Brick Frog plays an important role.
Like it felt nostalgic in that way because we get to spend just a little bit of time with everyone, right? So that was comforting, to say the least. I did kind of like the revelations about oh god, what was her name? The one girl that could turn invisible.
There's Bobby Saint Simone, and then her daughter is Deborah.
So I guess Deborah is the one that we see. Well, no, it was Bobby Saint Simone, because we get her backstory of like how she became invisible and stuff like that. Like I thought that stuff was neat. That was kind of a detour in the plot where like Hank goes to visit her. Just like, and you can tell that like he's being like, all right, when's the right time to say you're my mom? And she just immediately is like, I'm not your mom, right? It's like, you've been here before, right? Like
I love that.
Which is a great callback to them being clones, that like somewhere along the line he's figured it out before multiple times and has like
which is
gone to her. It's just like,
heartbreaking that maybe Hank and Dean, because at the end of this special, the audience knows, but they still don't know exactly who their mom is. They just know it isn't Bobby Saint Simone. They don't know that Deborah like donated her eggs for this project. That's a secret for just us. The fact that maybe they have learned in the past and then just had their memories wiped, or they died and got rebooted, is very heartbreaking. They can't make any progress. But I love it's good to know this information, which is surprising. I have always imagined that like Doc was in love once and like had his heart broken, and this woman like abandoned him with these babies. I imagine that's perhaps what other people have been picturing as well.
Yeah.
So to learn that there was no woman, he just reached out to like an acquaintance. He got some eggs, got some biological material. He has no real connection to this woman besides like admiring her mother as this like beautiful woman he encountered when he was very young, which is why I guess he gives that name. Because the Action Man tells it to Hank in Coma Town. He's like, as far as I know, your mom's an actress named Bobby Saint Simone. Yeah. Like you can imagine like Rusty Venture just has these babies all of a sudden. The people in his family are like, where'd those come from? And he's like, what? This real fox named Bobby St. Simone, meow. She took off, and now I'm stuck with these two. Like, you're left to imagine what story it is that he told everybody for why he just has these babies. It's not clear.
He's like
who all his
ledgers. Joker. You want to know how I got these kids? And every time it's a different story.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. The Monarch's like, you want to know how I got this hate? Those are the two major questions of the show.
But that's the thing, like, even though their mom is kind of non-existent, I also imagine something that would have happened in late season 8, if not beyond, it's like, well, is the Monarch also their dad, kind of? So now they have two dads. How does that work? And right,
They've
and they just have
had
this
so
like
many parents around.
I'm there had to have been some gag where they ask Dr. Venture if it's okay if they go do something, and then he says no, and then they go to the Monarch and he says yes, and so they go do it. It's like, ask your mom, ask your other dad, right? Like there had to have been something like that.
I was really hoping that if they had found out that Dr. Venture and the Monarch were brothers, that then we would have seen the boys called Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, Aunt Dr. Mrs. Uncle the Monarch. Like,
you're right, yeah.
I wanted that. I wanted them to figure out what to call these people now.
Yeah.
But the mom reveal is so touching to me that at the end of the day, the point is you don't need a mom. I'm not telling you because you don't need to know. You just need to know that I love you. Maybe I've done a very bad job of ever showing that. I let you die several times, but then I did reboot you several times. Like, they've always had this complicated relationship with their father. And to learn that he was not stuck with them. He made them. Those boys were made with like purpose and intention and creativity and love. And also comes from this like deep place of loneliness. Like, he didn't have a woman in his life. He grew up like this only child of this like dad who wasn't absent but was emotionally absent and dragged him all around the world, and he never knew who his mom was. Like, there's something tragic in him just making like his own children to be brothers to each other in a way that he never had. At least didn't know that he had. He didn't know that he had a clone out there or a little JJ growing inside his body.
Multiple clones out there.
There's a moment where all of the helper pods are like lifting the building up in the air, and Doc is calling Billy and White, trying to get them to help fix it. And Billy's like, you started this problem. You have to take responsibility for it. And Doc's like, I never wanted to make these things. I never wanted to get into home consumer products. Like, I wanted to make super science stuff. And at that point in the movie, you see that as a metaphor of him talking about the boys. I never wanted to make those things. Don't make me take responsibility for my sons. Yeah. And then you learn, no, he did want to make them. He so intentionally created sweet little Hank and Dean. And it's through super science. That has always been his way. Like, it was JJ who's like, what if I made a phone? What if I made an iPod? Like, JJ liked that stuff. Rusty never did. Rusty wants to make a walking eye. He wants to make two sweet little twin boys and a walking eye. Just let him do that.
This is like, so this is, I think, a good example of like the when you see teams like the X-Men or something, right? How do they have the money to get all these like planes that keep being destroyed and live in this mansion, and none of them have jobs? And there's always that thing like, oh, well, they use the patents of their inventions to like sell, but then you don't see any of that stuff like hit mass market or anything like that. Right. And so it's just like, how does this happen? So like, it is one of those interesting, like, good examples of like, you're actually seeing it happen. Like they use the technology that they have in Helper to make the like home helper bot thing, and then they can make money selling that, and that feeds his adventures and super science and all of that stuff. So it also is in an odd way like this interesting partnership of like, I'm just here to do super science versus cool, we will enable that.
Yeah.
By taking all of the stuff that you invent and reconfiguring it into like home consumer goods.
Or stuff that your dad invented, that your brother invented.
Right.
Stuff that Billy and White and Pirate Captain are going to make for you.
Yeah.
And he makes these things look like Helper. And Helper beeps at him and is upset. And he says, it's an homage, not a replacement. And you realize he has done that several times. He's made several things that kind of look like Helper. We'll use Helper as a model. And Helper never has been replaced. Yeah. Like there's that there's that like more sleek robot butler that like JJ had in place when they first moved into Ventec Tower that Helper pushes off the roof. Like Helper holds his own. Like Helper proves himself every time. I've always liked Helper, even if he just beeps and he doesn't speak. I think he's sweet that he knows nothing but the Venture family, but he's been there constantly, tirelessly, like since Rusty was a kid. Like he really loves that family, and I think they really do love Helper in their own way. And I love to see that when Doc created the boys, it's just him and Helper there in that lab. Like Helper, these boys have so many other parents, and Helper's definitely one of them.
Definitely.
Like sometimes a family isn't a mom and a dad. Sometimes it's a dad and a robot and a bodyguard and then another bodyguard and a guy in a butterfly costume
who lives next door, right? So I wanted to talk real quick about Old Man Ben, the guy who's supposed to be the like Obi-Wan knockoff, but also isn't a wizard. But so here's the thing, like because I've only watched the show one time, and didn't really get to revisit it. I forgot what the kind of relevant details, plot info on Ben was exactly. I know there was that one time where I think it was Hank kind of discovered him and had some good conversations with him, and I think watching this movie, having this kind of vague, like I don't really remember what happened exactly, but I kind of do. I was even wondering, like, is there going to be some other bigger reveal with him? Like not that he would be like he's their real father or something like that, but I just felt like there's something else with him there, but maybe they already did those reveals and I just kind of don't remember it. Did you get any kind of vibes like that there was something more to his character?
We first meet Ben in A Very Venture Halloween, where Dean goes off and encounters him, and that's where Dean learns that him and Hank are clones. And then there's an episode in season 7 where they go back to the compound and he tries to visit him, but he's out surfing and he just talks to Red Helper, who then reveals that Rusty was a clone. He's just like another colleague of Jonas's who isn't part of like that team venture with like Action Man and Colonel Gentleman. He's almost like Jonas's Billy and White, just sort of living tangentially out there on the outskirts of this little family action adventure unit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I it was just kind of one of those things because I didn't really remember it exactly. I was just like, I wonder, who knows? Maybe I'm missing something or forgot something that would have wrapped this up. But
he's an exposition guy. We probably would have seen more of him if we got back to Colorado more often, and if he wasn't voiced by Academy Award winner J.K. Simmons, who I presume is very busy.
Right, yeah. He has
He's Invincible be the yellow
season 2 coming up. Right, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I, like all of this chaos, the search to find their mom, to find Hank, to get back in good standings with the calamitous intent, what's the full name here?
The Guild of Calamitous Intent.
Guild? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
To get back in good standings with them, like all of that kind of comes to a head at Ben's house when they like they all meet back up. They kind of reveal what they learned, what they found out, and then we kind of get the big final reveal of what the hell this title means. Radiant is the blood of the Baboon
yes.
heart. What did you think of this? That they're not just like Dr. Venture and the Monarch aren't just pure clones of one another. They also have Baboon DNA in them.
The Monarch has it, which seems like the way Ben tells it is that they made this Rusty clone, and then they also wanted to make a Monarch, the clone that was going to be Malcolm Fitzcarraldo, the Monarch. And they recognize that there's like a balding gene in the Venture family, so they give him like 2% Baboon DNA to try and counteract that. And Ben's like, I told him, don't put that monkey junk in there. It's just gonna make him more aggressive. But that's how we end up with the Monarch's resplendent hair and eyebrows out to here.
Right. Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. It was one of those things that I at first was like, that was it. That's why they named it Radiant Blood of the Baboon Heart. That's ridiculous. But like, I think having it sit for a couple days, I kind of like it. It is this like, it's a small detail that feels like a joke that, again, unfortunately, they probably would have done more with if they had gotten more time, or we could see the fallout of this. But it felt just this like throwaway. Oh yeah, we just put in 2% baboon. That's it. Right? It's just like, oh. Okay, cool. Okay.
It ends up lifting him up higher than ever putting him down. I was also on team they are half brothers, with their clones of each other being the second option. I do think it's very funny that when the Monarch when they learn that they're related to each other, like they both write it off like, I don't know, we're like 14th cousins or something. Who cares? It doesn't make a difference. And then they're like, Dr. Venture's like, well, my dad did get around. I mean, maybe. I love how long it takes them to realize, is there something?
Don't you talk about my dad like that.
I like that journey between the two of them, that they don't think at all what the audience has been thinking. And to learn that Monarch is a clone of Rusty, which it's still kind of ambiguous if there was an original born of woman Rusty Venture, or if he was always an experiment from the beginning, like kind of what he did with Hank and Dean. Like there's still a vague area there. Like, who was Rusty's mom? The Monarch does look so much like the woman we saw was his mom. Is that truly the mom of both of them? I don't know. There's still some ambiguity there. But I really love when Monarch's kind of down on himself for being a clone of Rusty Venture plus 2% Baboon DNA. And then Dr. Invisible Wife comes in and tells him, you're a Greek myth. You're a living myth of a man pitted in an eternal battle against the worst aspects of yourself. I love that that's it's a cherry on top of the Monarch story. He's fighting himself. He's so good at hate.
Yeah, absolutely.
The oppositions between those two are really fascinating. Like when Dr. Venture says, yeah, I hate you too, but I don't walk around obsessing about it all day. It's not why I put on my speed suit in the morning. Like, he lives for super science and for his family, and the Monarch lives to be a villain who hates Dr. Venture. Like, there's so little they have in common. Like, Monarch's like such a loving husband and like kind of in this odd partnership with like Henchman 21, and Dr. Venture is nothing like that, but he does have his boys, and like there's nothing about either one of them that like intersects with what the other one's doing. They are opposites in so many different ways. I love that this changes nothing about the Monarch. He's like, okay, I don't know how to do anything else than this. I still hate him. I'm still going to keep at it. I'm going to send my invisible wife out there to pants him in front of
everybody. Great. Yeah, like I think like you had this like 2% baboon DNA reveal is it's not a, well, we don't like the Monarch, so we're gonna do this joke at his expense. Like, as the title implies, it's this like radiance. Like, this is a thing to kind of like make you shine. Like, this is the thing that truly makes you who you are. And yeah, it feels like a celebration of the Monarch, and not not like, we're gonna, like, this whole thing is a joke at your expense, right? I don't know, like it felt like this neat way to be like, here's this like almost throwaway joke, this little tiny detail that has changed everything.
Yeah.
Right, but it's made you who you are, and that's why it's special, and that's why it's such an important thing, and that's why it's radiant. Radiant is the blood of the baboon heart, which is also a great title.
They're
right?
Good with words like that.
Yeah, it fits right in with like the pulp hero stuff of like Doc Savage and Johnny Quest and all of that stuff, which is what they're spoofing and riffing on, so it fits right in. And it's also just kind of this ridiculous nonsense.
Yes, it's
radiant is the blood of the baboon heart. What?
Right, it's very evocative nonsense, and it echoes what Ben tells Hank when he gives him the watch that like Jonas gave to him years ago, and he says, "You choose your family. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does." And he tells him about the watch, how it's got like all these extra dials and like, you know, this little calendar thing where it tells you what day it is. He's like, these are called complications in watch terminology. And the more complications a watch has, the more value it has. And he uses that as this metaphor, like complications make your life special. And that's true for the boys, and it's true for the Monarch. It's true for everybody.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting echoes in this, like how the boys never find out the identity of the biological woman who gave her material to help make them. Reminded me of one other, like, very small sort of dangling thread from the series, which is where Billy doesn't know that his mom was also a superhero who worked with Team Venture. Yeah, and like, if the boys don't need to know that about their mom, like, Billy doesn't either. Not that I ever expected that to be important enough to come up in the finale movie, but just thinking about these themes that keep recurring throughout the show, it really comes down to, for me, you don't need to know where you came from specifically. You just need to know where you came from emotionally. You need to know who you are. You need to know who your family is. Not like in a blood way, but like, who cares about me? Like, Hank and Dean don't need to know who Deborah St. Simone is. They need to know that their dad loves them, Helper loves them, Brock, the hatred, Orpheus, like all these people around them, like, love them, will care for them, have their back. They don't need to know anything about the St. Simones.
Yeah.
Although it is so funny to me that the boys are descendants of the guild. That Deborah St. Simone's father is force majeure, who created that like big asteroid in space where like the council meets, and he's the one who like started the Guild of Calamitous Intent. Like, that's very funny that the boys it could inherit the guild.
Yeah, again, this is the things that you can think of would happen down the road, right? What happens when Dr. Venture retires, right? And they have to take up the mantle of Team Venture. Yeah, God, I had a blast watching this. I think it was a great time. I don't know if I have much else to say. Do you have more notes that you want to?
Kyle, I took so many notes.
Please.
What do you think I'm doing here?
Please.
The rest of this episode is now a monologue. Hold all questions for the end.
I'm muting my mic for the rest of the episode. Just kidding.
There's a lot of really wonderful callbacks in this.
Mm-hmm.
I love when Hank goes back to the compound and he sees all of these past memories of like all these different points across the series, even one that he doesn't actively remember, which is like the montage of Doc revealing to Orpheus, I guess, oh no, the boys are clones. They've died like a dozen times before. And there's that montage of deaths. And one of them is Hank wearing his Batman costume, holding an umbrella, jumping off the roof. Like that's in there. Maybe some buried memory in the back of Hank's head that appears. We get Brick Frog. We get the things like that big conspiracy board that Deborah made, tracking everything about Dr. and Mrs. the Monarch's past. That's filled with all these fun little Easter eggs. When they watch the video clip for Follow That Bikini, itself a perfect genre pastiche.
Right.
They're watching the clip on YouTube. You can see that the person who uploaded the video was Augustus St. Cloud.
Nice.
And Serena was watching Follow That Bikini like in some episode in season 6.
Okay,
like they were trying to seed this early. It's fun to see what they can pick up from earlier seasons and like make into something, and what they were trying to legitimately like plot out long term. Like it's really cool to see that pay off.
That was always one of the strengths of this show, is the like long-term storytelling that they would like start planting in season 2 and 3, right? And you wouldn't get an answer until season 5 or 6. Like that is just incredible, because it really does make you think, no, they've had this whole thing like at least loosely plotted out of like the directions they want to go. Here's some of the like family trees of who's related to who's a clone of who. They at least knew some of that stuff, so they could start putting those details in there, and that's always been incredible. So
I know, like the pants golem. Listening to the commentary, they said that the pants golem was like the one thing left over from their pitch book from like 23 years ago that they hadn't yet worked into a story. So like that's awesome. What the pants golem is. Apparently they've been wanting to do more with Jefferson Twilight for ages. That's why we go visit like where he used to live in Chicago as part of like a shared space among other weird vigilante heroes who each have their own corner of a warehouse. The logo on the warehouse is that like handy dandy hair wax. There's an episode in season 7 where the Monarchs ran out of wax for his eyebrows and his goatee, so he looks real shabby. Like that logo is in here again. The show's really efficient about developing things and then reusing them. One of my favorite callbacks, which goes by like so quickly, is when Hank goes to see Dermot and they're watching the clip of Follow That Bikini when Hank thinks, that's Bobby St. Simone, that's my mom. And Dermot says, she's hot, I'd do her. And then Hank's like, dude, that's my mom. When Hank slept with Dermot's mom. Not knowing. And Dermot still doesn't know any of that. Dermot knows his dad is Rusty Venture. He still doesn't know like his sister is really his mom. Like, what, is Dermot ever going to learn this? There's
Such
still so many secrets.
Poor Dermot.
There's so much secrets and tragedy pervasive throughout this entire series. And you know that like if somebody just talked to the right somebody else, like everything would be revealed. But like I said, I think that's part of the point of it is, what do you need to know? Does Dermot need to know like his sister is his mom and his mom is his grandma, or does he just need to know that he has a family who loves him? Like, don't look too hard at it. Just know who you are emotionally, know your own truth, and grow past anything that's holding you back. Like, I liked Hank running off and being counseled by these past personas he's taken, like Film Noir Hank from the episode where you find out about Dermot's parentage, and the Bat Hank and Enrico Matassa and Russian Guyovich, which is a fake name he makes up when he like puts on a henchman uniform and sneaks into like the Monarch wedding. Like I like that we get an actual Russian intrinsic design for Russian Guyovich. and then he goes into Coma Town, and then Dean lands in Coma Town too, and then he's got his never-ending story get up from like,
yeah,
I think also that same episode, like it's the season 2 or 3 finale, I forget which, where he goes on like a big fantasy adventure. I like he hasn't done it to the degree that Hank has, but he has had these flights of fancy, these escapes that are meant to sort of like protect him, and they both go into Coma Town. Orpheus is also there dressed as Zardoz, which is incredible. They go in there amazing. And they shed that behind. They leave it behind. These personas that have represented hiding from something, running away from a problem, feeling isolated, feeling like you can't talk to anybody. The boys leave that behind. They get out. They're there for each other. They are honest. They are on the same page. Like, you don't see it, but you know. I believe they're going to resolve the issue with Serena. Like, I think those boys will have each other's backs forever. Serena, I think, is genuinely lovely and didn't mean to hurt anybody. There's really lovely growth in this. And absolutely. Silly things like you get to see the Ventronic supersuit again. A thing I completely forgot existed. And I was so happy that this was this like final card that they could pull out. Like, you remember this thing from like season 3? We still have it.
Oh, man.
God, you hear the Jacket song again. I think that's funny when Billy and White are proving to Doc, like, no, you can't. We can't launch this helper bot. When you turn the speaker up too high, it levitates. And then when you turn it off, it falls. That could crush a baby's head. I like that the example song, not just that the show is playing. I feel like White is like, put on the Shallow Gravy song I helped produce. We'll use this. Like, it feels in character that that's what's happening. I think that's a sweet callback. Like, this really feels like such a scrapbook of various important little moments from across the series in like these subtle ways. It doesn't feel like a finale clip show or anything like that.
Right. Yes.
Like, the characters aren't really reminiscing. The show is reminiscing about itself and taking you on this trip down memory lane that you are so grateful for. Because I have watched the show so many times. This has truly been my comfort food show since like I was a sophomore in college up till pandemic. The Venture Brothers really like got me through early pandemic. I can't tell you what an emotional like crutch I used the show as. It really was there for me when little other things were. And it feels, I don't know, just these dumb little things that I remember coming back and being important. Like just Billy shouting, "My mom made chicken piccata!"
Right, yeah.
Like old references, new references, like everything's in here and it all feels valuable. Like it all has a meaning behind it. Nothing feels cheap. Like every dumb little throwaway gag in this show has been something like I hung a sense of happiness on.
Right. Yeah, because like that's even something that I was thinking about. Like there is a world in which they make a Venture Bros movie that is pared down to one of these plots that's like happening in this, and it focuses on that. It puts it under a microscope, and we get to see more of what that plot would have been, right? And that would have been fine, but also it could have been something that potentially stood on its own or did something like that. And it's really not. And it is this thing that just kind of feels like a continuation in the best way possible. It does not feel like, and again, I mean this in the best way. Like it almost doesn't feel like a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if I would say this is a good movie just by itself, right? But like it worked with all of these references to things that the characters are saying or have done or have been thinking about this entire time. It just feels like, okay, this is what happened that next day, right? And it's just like, yeah, that fits. Yeah. That makes sense, you know? It's just, man. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, I was very happy this happened. I am satisfied. I will always hunger for more. But this is a show that's so dense. You can go back and like pick up new things from it. Like I'll be rewatching the show on a loop forever till I die.
Yeah. Or who knows? Maybe instead of more venture burrows, they end up making something new. Something
who knows
that runs for 10 seasons. Who knows?
The time I've spent with the show has been a really important cornerstone of my life. Sincerely, I'm very grateful for it. There's something. The show always feels so loving to me, like just the creativity behind it, and like the love the creators have for each other and for the characters and for the fans, and like that's the final line of the DVD commentary. Everybody, I feel like you hear this in a lot of other commentaries, but it felt extra special here. It's the final line is like Doc saying, "We love you. Bye."
Yeah. Right?
Like I know you do. I really feel that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a blast. I had a great time. This was good stuff.
It was.
I think that might wrap us up.
Yeah, finally.
There you
go. It's
been
a long journey.
Our Venture Brothers journey has concluded. It's bittersweet.
Right.
Know?
There's stuff that I have such a sentimental and superstitious attachment to this show. Like I've had that book sitting back there, The Art and Making of the Venture Brothers. It's a very nice book. It's a nice display piece. But I put it up there and like, I don't know if you can see, I've got like a neon sign of like a hand and like a peace sign a Go Team Venture V. I've got a vase back there with butterflies on it. Like I tried to make a little Venture Brothers shrine. This was when the show was canceled. I'm like, this is symbolic.
I must summon it.
We
need more.
Infuse this. Right. I have to manifest this. I've got my like Dr. Venture and Monarch action figures that were like hanging over my desk through like all this time I had to work from home. And I'd look to them. I made my phone wallpaper a background painting from the show of just like Ventec Tower at night in the New York City skyline.
Amazing.
Like, I made a promise to myself, you don't change this. I said that in 2020. I'm like, you don't change this until you get to see the next Venture Brothers. And finally, these like ritualistic trappings I made for myself as some silly superstitious thing. Like I could power the show into reappearing in front of me. I can leave him behind. I can leave him in Coma Town now.
There you go. Good stuff. Well, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
I don't update him much, but I can be found on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT.
There you go. You guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer on Twitter and on Threads. If you'd like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at The Whatnots, we are at The Whatnots on Twitter and at The Whatnots Official on Threads. So please go like, share, and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, we got plenty more videos for you to check out right over there. That would help us out a ton. But yeah, this has been number 129 of the Whatnots Reactor Core. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.